You're tuned into the Writing Community Chat Show, the live streaming YouTube podcast that brings you the stories of authors, screenwriters, and more. Indie or established, this show's for the community, and we invite you to be a part of it. Head to the writingcommunitychatshow.com for more info. The WCCS. Together as one, we get it done.
Hello and welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. Hello everybody and welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. I am Chris, for those who don't know, and Mr. Hooley, who is normally sat here, is notoriously late once again. I'm sure he'll turn up very soon and I'll throw him on the screen as I tend to do. I hope you're having a great week and you've been very productive. If you've been writing, I'd love to know about it. After the show last week, we had an after show where our subscribers on Substack joined us for a chat. It was very good. And we decided to come up with a new project, which was an anthology between us. So that's been developing in the early stages in the background, which is very cool. If you'd like to get involved in those sorts of things, then please do consider subscribing to our Substack and just throw us a message and we'll certainly look at bringing you into those sorts of projects. So that's something to look forward to in the new year. It's always nice to start a new project, and we hope you have either started something new or you are still working on something and with full of motivation. If you are not, if you are new to writing, excuse me, I don't know what just happened there. If you are new to writing, then sorry, that's completely blown me that the things have just changed on its own. Yeah, if you're new to writing, then we released a video in the week where me and Chris did a little something new about the blank page and how that's a troublesome thing for some people, not just the blank page, but about writer's block as well. And you can get onto that video on our YouTube channel and you can actually get lots of our writing advice from that. So if that is something that you struggle with, then certainly do go and check that out, because we go through a lot of stuff that we've learned on the show and some of our own advice as authors as well. So yeah, please go and check that out. Happy Friday to Anya in the chat. I hope you've had a good week, and to Anna as well. Nice to see you back in the chat here. Chris Hooley, we're still waiting for, and I'm going to fix this right now. Sorry, do apologize for this little delay here. It seems StreamYard for the first time ever is having some sort of glitch and it's thrown up some different colors, but that's all okay. Not bad at all. Yeah, so I'll bring on tonight's guest. And if you have questions for our guest, please do consider saving them for the community question section at the end. Unless it's imperative that you get that question out there, you can send it in throughout. And by all means, send your comments in and we will get those up on screen. Hello, Chris Hooley. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good. Just explaining that you're late, and I'll throw you on screen when you arrive. And you may notice that it's all purple. StreamYard has just had a bit of a glitch, and it's thrown us into a different sort of banner panel show thing. So yeah, we're purple tonight.
Nice. I can deal with that. Yeah, I had some glitches of my own. That's why I was late. It's like,
Well, maybe you caused the glitch. I'm not sure.
Maybe. But I'm here now. I'm here. I'm ready to rumble. So
You are. How has your week been, Chris?
Yeah, it's been okay. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, some crazy stuff. Do you know what I did look at today? Two really interesting things. The first one, Elon Musk, his Starlink is now active for people to buy. So you can buy the super fast internet Starlink.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, that's quite interesting, because if you've got rubbish broadband now, according to Musk, you can get super high speed broadband anywhere in the world. So yeah, that was one thing. And then apparently an alien mothership landed in Mexico. Not that we're into conspiracies or anything like that, but it is interesting when it does pop up that those exciting things are happening around the world. So yeah, two things to look out for.
Are they connected with Elon Musk? Because, you know, there's lots of conspiracies out there about him.
Maybe. Who knows, mate? To be honest, I think 90% of people's reaction now is yeah, it's not going to be as bad as COVID, so we'll be fine.
It is kind of funny, isn't it? We get all these kind of things popping up on social media, and it's like, yeah, these spaceships or orbs or whatever the case may be, and everyone's just like, yeah, it doesn't really matter. It's crazy. We've just become accustomed to all crazy things. We're just used to it now.
Yeah, and a lot of the time we go, is that AI? Yeah, it's probably AI.
Yeah,
just ignore it.
That's the problem. From now on, no one's going to believe anything that happened, or pretty much anything anyone ever said, because they can just tweak it so much now. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think even if an alien walked into the room like now, knowing obviously how fearful I am of like ET or whatever, or used to be, I've got over and over that now, but I still don't think I'd believe it instantly. I think I'd think it was some sort of prank that I was involved in the show, and some sort of weird side hustle had come into the mix.
If I had arranged an alien to walk into your bedroom or wherever you're recording at right now, Chris, in your house, that would be an extreme prank.
It would, but you never know the realms of pranks, do you, amongst friends?
That is
I've
true.
done a few pranks in my time. I once put an entire person's office, every single item in it, in tinfoil, and it took me like 4 hours. And then the week after that, because that was quite a good prank, I filled their office with balloons. Literally, it took, again, same level of commitment, 2 or 3 hours, putting balloons up. But yeah, all in the realm of a prank. So yeah, you never know how the extent that someone will go.
Yeah, it's a classic. It's a classic. Anna said that it's so unfortunate we can't test the theory now. Well, obviously, and on a related note, there's an epic picture of Elon going around. Not an epic. There's a picture. He's wearing a cartoon onesie and rolling a joint. I don't know why it makes me crack up. So there's our point, that you can literally not believe anything you see these days, unless it was in fact what he did.
Yeah.
And we did a balloon prank for the writing coordinator when I worked at a writing center. It was fun. What's the balloon prank?
Just where you blow up loads of balloons and stick them in someone's office or a confined space, and they just open it, and then all the balloons just pop out. Like, yeah,
that makes sense. Cool.
Yeah,
right. What we're going to do is get our guest on, and we can talk all about her writing and her author journey and her books and other books and historical fiction and pranks, if she wants to get into those as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, today we are thrilled to introduce a very special guest whose work has captivated readers around the globe. She's a USA Today, Globe and Mail and Amazon bestseller, whose historical fiction takes us on an unforgettable journey through wartime resilience and courage. From her debut novel, A Woman of War, to fan favorites like The Secret Messenger, her stories shine a light on the unsung heroes of history, particularly those brave women who defied the odds. With a fascinating background that includes journalism, midwifery, and an MA in creative writing, she brings a unique depth and authenticity to her writing. And of course, she's got a loyal writing companion in her dog, Basil. Please join me in giving a nice warm welcome to the incredibly talented Mandy Robotham. Hello, Mandy.
Hello. Thank you. That was a nice introduction. That's better than I get from my family, anyway.
Well, we all know that feeling as authors. Have family that don't read their books. Do they get stuck into yours, Mandy?
No, absolutely not. I've got 2 boys. I've got a husband and 2 boys, and no, I don't think any of them have read any of them. And so, I've given up now.
It's one of those things. I think a lot of us resonate with that, but it's like when you first do have those books and they don't read it, you kind of get like offended. But as you mentioned, the time goes on, you just kind of give up.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's unheard of in the writing community for, as long as the readers like them. And my mum reads them. She reads them all. And she's always in the supermarkets trying to get people to buy them surreptitiously, hanging around the shelves.
I love that idea. Yeah. Just like, look at this book. Look at this. Come and get it.
She does.
Personal sales assistant is fantastic. Yeah. We should all have one of those. Mandy, so where in the world are you right now for people watching and listening?
So I'm in Stroud in Gloucestershire, which is, if you don't know it very well, it's not too far. It's about 8 miles from Gloucester. It's about 10 miles from Cheltenham, We're not far from Bath and Bristol, so we're pretty much in the middle of all of those, and it's a beautiful Cotswold countryside.
Oh, nice. That sounds fantastic. It's always interesting, and the answer generally is often no. And when I ask this question, is there much of a writing scene, or are you aware of the writing scene in your local community?
Oh, there's huge amounts of us here. We're falling over each other.
Wow.
With writers here. Ian, I've never seen Ian Kewen in town, but he is the patron of our local Stroud Book Festival every year. We've got Katie Ford, there's Dinah Jeffries that lives in Cheltenham. We've got Jane Bailey, we've got Emma Flint who lives in Stroud. So, huge amount of writers, and we have a WhatsApp group. We get on, we have coffee together, so it's really quite social. There's always someone you can call if you want a bit of plot surgery.
I was going to say, because it's great, the writing community online is why we exist. It's amazing, but to have that personal connection in the real world, not the real world, but in the local community, is amazing as well. And I was going to say, do you contact or have meetups? So you do lean on each other for writing advice or help? Is that kind of the case?
Yeah, quite often. I mean, there's quite often a thing that comes across. I'm stuck, and someone says, "Well, do you want to meet? Do you want a dog walk? Do you want to?" I call it plot surgery. And it's help. I need some plot surgery, and it's only just sometimes a conversation, and it unsticks you from your feet in the mud, as it were.
Yeah.
And they say, well, why don't you do this? You go, oh yeah, why on earth didn't I think of that? And then you're off again. And so I find it absolutely invaluable, really invaluable.
I think that is absolutely incredible. Like the dog walking writers group, I think that's so good. Just the fact that you can walk one-on-one with somebody and have that conversation about your writing, it's something that, as you said, can unlock that sort of block, or just give you that next step or the push you want to get back into writing, if that's the case. So I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah, no, we're very lucky around here. There's always someone to call. I think it is a bit like a helpline. It reminds me of in Father Ted, where they have the priest's helpline. It sort of reminds me slightly of that.
Brilliant.
I was going to say, what's the etiquette like in the WhatsApp group? Because I know sometimes I'm in a few myself, and it's like, do I mute that group? How do I start a response in that group? Like, if I've got an issue, do I just send an emoji with that message that I'm sending? Like, how do you navigate that in a writer's WhatsApp group?
Well, I think my feeling is, if with any group, if you haven't got something useful to say, I don't say anything. There's always support, and we're always retweeting when it's publication day or it's cover reveal day or that sort of thing. We're always doing that. But if you haven't got anything relevant to say, I tend just to keep quiet and let other people who know what they're talking about say it instead. I'm also part of the Savvy Writers Snug as well, which is on Facebook, and that's really useful. I find that's really useful because that is a closed group for writers only, and there are no editors or publicists or anything. It's just writers only, so it feels like a very safe space.
Nice.
That's kind of like the work group without the managers, isn't it? It's like you can just be yourself a little bit more and trust that you're in a safe space to say things without judgment.
Yeah, and you can post anonymously as well if you feel very, very worried about what you're saying, but it is a very safe space, and you can vent. There's a lot of venting that goes on.
Yeah, I bet. Okay, what we want to do is, if StreamYard will allow me, is to play our first video, which we might not have, Chris Hooley. We don't have, so we're going to ignore that. Real technical issues going on tonight. First time in nearly 5 years. Okay, what we want to do is find out how you got into the writing world and where it all began for you. So if we rewind the metaphorical tape, as it were, do you remember at what point writing was like a dream of yours, and how did you take the first step to get onto that journey?
Well, the first dream I had, I was about 9 years old, and I'd read a book called Harriet the Spy, which is quite a sort of famous book in American children's literature, by a woman called Louise Fitzhugh, and it was about Harriet, who wanted to be a spy, but she also wanted to be a writer. And of course, I was 9 years old. I'm 59 years old now. It's taken me quite a while to get published. But basically, the idea of having my own book in my hand that I'd written, that just come, all the words just come out of my head. I found that quite mind-blowing, utterly mind-blowing. And I couldn't imagine how you would write so many words. And it took me a long while. I went to university. I came out and got a job as a trainee reporter. Promptly went on strike for 6 months. As soon as I got my first reporting job, we all went out on strike. That was quite fun, in a strange sort of way. And then I got a couple of other jobs, and then I became a freelance magazine writer. And then sort of scroll forward, I was 29 and I had a baby. And then that kind of blew everything out of the water, and I became a midwife after that.
Wow.
So yeah, bit of a change. I became a midwife, and I spent 20 years being a midwife, but I did carry on writing articles, stuff about midwifery, and it never really went away. And then when my children were older, I thought, if I don't do it now, I've got 2 boys, and anybody who's got boys will know that they don't need you quite as much. You know, they don't want you around, basically. They sort of sort themselves out. And I thought, well, I'm always saying that I'm going to write this book, I better go and do it. And so, long story short, I got on the MA course at Oxford Brookes, and I did the MA over 2 years part-time while I was working. And after the course had finished that I actually got the idea for my first book.
Yeah. I'm intrigued to know that. How did birthing a child then lead you to want to go straight into that career of being a midwife?
I just felt really special. We've got a wonderful, wonderful birth unit in Stroud, which I ended up having both my babies in, and then working in and training in, and it's called Stroud Maternity Unit. And long may it live. It's the most wonderful place. On the outside, it looks like an RAF bunker. And on the inside, it's absolutely wonderful.
Amazing.
And I had my first baby in there, and I thought it was the best thing since sliced bread.
So it's almost a case of being inspired by the women that, helped you in that process.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's a very similar story that's kind of, apparent in your novels, is the fact that you look at the women that were in difficult positions and roles and became the heroes in those scenarios. Is that something you've always kind of looked up to, is like a stronger woman, like what's the word I'm looking for? Like someone to look up to, or like women as being something in your life that has been in that situation?
Yes, definitely. And I more so since I started being a midwife, because if anyone's ever been in a room full of midwives, they are feisty. They are feisty. They are sometimes opinionated in a good way. They don't take any crap. They are very kind. They are very loving, but it also, it's quite a tough business, birthing babies safely. And so, they were definitely, I looked up to them, and they are extremely strong and resilient. So they became my kind of blueprint.
It fascinates me that you look at history, specifically, even, pre-World War II, World War One, like when women had to give birth without the kind of medical supplies and assistance that we do now, in probably unsanitary places. And it just kind of blows my mind how they managed to do that.
Well, the thing about birth is that I was a home birth midwife for, I did a lot at home, and sometimes in tents and yurts and boats, and, not necessarily in a house. And the process of birth hasn't changed for thousands and thousands of years. It's the things around it that have changed. And yes, you've got to be safe. Number one, be safe, get a safe baby and mum. But beyond that, you can basically have a baby without anything, I think I've tied cords with the end of the ends of bits of curtains before now, when we haven't had a cord clamp to hand. Sterilize them, it's fine.
There's a lot of love for Harriet the Spy. Anna says, I loved that book when I was a kid. Halo, who we know is very spy-y, Loved that book. That book made me spy on everyone. She learned a lot. And Anya says, I loved Harriet the Spy, and same.
Yeah. I just like Harriet, I walked around the school playground clutching my notebook, probably looking very, very silly, but I really thought I was Harriet.
Yeah, doesn't seem like you're alone in that thought.
Yeah, I'm really curious to know, like, obviously you mentioned about the fact that when your boys were a little bit older, that you thought it's now or never. But how did you navigate? Obviously, that urge to write was always there. So was that always your plan to, like, you know, when I get a little bit more time in my sort of personal life, I'll start writing a lot more? Or was that something that you always wanted to do, but just never found the time to do it because you were so dedicated to your career?
Yeah, probably the second one there, the latter. I just didn't have time to do anything more than an article, really, or the headspace, as all your viewers and writers know, you all know that you've got to have headspace to actually plan and you know, sort a book out in your head. And that's also procrastination, isn't it? So many people say, oh, I'm going to write a book one day. I'm going to write a book one day. And suddenly I realized, I thought, you know, these books just don't write themselves. I've got to get on and do it. The thing about me is that I needed a group to push me along and do that. So I joined a small group in the local community. Then I joined a weekend course. I think it was at the Guardian. And then I joined, and I thought, well, if I'm spending all this money, I've got to get something out of it, you know. And that I know there's been criticism about MAs from various, you know. Yeah, but for someone like me who was working full time, one day a week, going to Oxford, sitting in a room with people that love books, talking books, it was like a dream, you know, and then going, right, I'm going to do this. For me, it gave me the impetus because I needed the kick up the backside, really.
Yeah. Well, Chris put his hand up there. But yeah, MA, the creative writing course, of course, will have lots of advice and tips in there. So is there something that really resonated with you, that kind of stuck with you, that you use still, that you could share with our audience that perhaps is a great writing tip or some advice for them?
Oh, it's the old classic. It's just go away and write it. It really is. So I think the Oxford course was good in that they had lots of agents come in. They had former people on the courses who were published, they telling their story. They had agents, they had publishers, they had people, this is how to do your pitch. So it was quite practical. It wasn't just go away and write your words and, you know, something will happen. They actually did help you form a way to get an agent and do those pitches. So I think it was quite practical in that sense, because, you know, your letter, there's lots of letters that are circulated online. Your letter to an agent or a publisher has got to be quite spot on, otherwise they won't look at it.
Yeah.
See, I originally thought all that, and I thought similar things on an MA, but then I went to like the likes of Harrogate, and people have a few drinks, and then they go, "Oh, you wrote a book, send it me," and I was like, "Oh, that's an interesting way to do it," and people are doing it like that, and it's working. So yeah, it works both ways.
It does work. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I actually got my agent at a party,
Yeah.
and because I got my first deal without an agent, and I knew I wanted an agent, and I went to I find the sort of drinks parties quite difficult to negotiate. I'm not a party person, and I met my agent, and I said, "Oh, I've written a couple of books, and I'm looking for an agent." And she said, "Send me something, no promises, but you know, we've now been together for 5-6 years, and you know, I love her to bits."
Well, there you have it, people. If you want to get your book, you know, to someone, then go to a party or a festival and network. And we've talked about that before.
Go to the right ones. That's the thing. Go to the right ones.
Yeah.
And I do echo the best part of an MA is being with other writers and being with other people who love books and love writing. But I think you don't need to pay an institution that. You can start your own community. Obviously, you can watch the show. You can reach out to people in your local area. You can put a Facebook ad out to anyone who's interested in writing. There's lots of other ways of doing it.
Oh, absolutely. Totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree. You don't. It's just for me, like I say, I was working full time. I needed that structure. I needed to be able to say, I'm having this day off and I am going to this place. And because you had to write something every week, it made me write it. I think otherwise I probably wouldn't have done it.
I think you're quite right, because me and Chris have the same sort of mindset in that we've got a community here and then we can lean on that. But for some people like yourself there, having that commitment of a date that you have to go and be in front of somebody, that's the motivation you needed. So it's not always the same case for everybody, but it's the same sort of thing where you have that advice and support. So I think it's just connecting is the key there.
Absolutely.
Getting yourself involved.
Yeah, because writing itself, when you know, nobody will write for you. You can write together. I quite often write as a author called Sarah Steele. She writes wartime fiction, and we will quite often sit opposite each other. We will have a quick cup of coffee in a cafe, chat for 10 minutes, and then we both plug in our earphones and off we go. And my God, does she make me work? She types like the wind. And so I feel like, well, I better do something. And so I'm quite often having to keep up with her.
Yeah. Sorry, Chris, I thought you were going to ask a question and I was going to ask one as well. So I was going to say, obviously, your boys are grown up. You've finished the MA. Try and take us to that moment where the idea for the first book struck, and then how you sort of navigated that process from that point.
Well, I came out of the thing thinking I need the longest thing I'd written was the dissertation, which was, I think, 17,000 words. Beyond that, I hadn't written anything longer, short stories only. And we know that in the British climate, short stories don't sell as well as in the US, for instance. So it's unlikely only established authors get anthologies of short stories. So I thought I need a novel idea. The old thing is write what you know. So why not the first one be about a midwife? And I just got to thinking, something struck me one day. I think it was we were sitting in the coffee room. Midwives love to chat after a birth, and afterwards we were and I was thinking, is there one baby that we would not make an effort for? Would there actually be a scenario where you would not want? Who would the parents be? And then I came up with the ultimate, as in, Hitler. And then I thought, oh, what a ridiculous idea. Book about, Hitler's baby. Famously, he never had any. There's been rumours, but they're only, conspiracy rumours. And then I thought, well, hang on, this is fiction. And I went and had a coffee. I've got a name drop here with Katie Ford, whose grandchildren I'd looked after in labour, and she'd become a friend. And I explained to her, and I said, I think this is probably a novella idea. And she said, oh, don't be silly. She said, this is your first novel. Go away and write it. And I thought, well, if Katie Ford says that, then I should do it. And it sort of gave me the impetus that she thinks it's got legs. As we say, it's got legs. I should go away and do it. And so I did. I just went away and wrote it. An hour before I went to work, hour afterwards in the coffee shop. And I'm lucky that once I get on a roll, I can write quickly.
Yeah. Do you feel like, I think that's just gone out my head. The fact that you wanted or suggested it to be a novella and then were almost convinced to write it as a novel. Do you think that was down to the fact you hadn't written many words before that, or maybe, 17,000 manuscript? Because I'm very similar. I always write novellas. And even now, having written quite a few things, quite short, in comparison to a novel, I still see that, novel expectation of 90,000 words as something, way past my skill set, even though I probably could do it. But mentally, I think it's like a marathon. Until you've done it, you don't believe you could do it. Is that right?
Absolutely. I totally agree. I couldn't think how I would ever get past 15 to 17,000 words. How do you stretch it out this long? I don't know how I can't remember how I paced myself on that first one. It just grew. I think I thought I needed other things to happen. There has to be one main central plot. This is what you learn, from reading other things, talking to other writers, plus side plots to go along, side characters, side plots. I needed to have a space of time that it would happen. And I don't remember it being very hard to get to 95,000 words. And then after that, you're right. It's like doing a marathon. You know you can do it. The second and every subsequent, that's not to say I don't struggle. I do struggle. 50,000 words is a killer. It's an absolute killer. It's like the top of the hill. You have to get yourself over. But yeah, once I'd done one, it became easier. I wouldn't say easy, but easier to get to
of course.
100,000, which is generally my brief, is to get to 100,000.
Nice. Cool. Chris, any more questions on this first part before we move on to the what's the story?
Yeah, I was going to say just a bit more about the process in terms of like, did the reader ever come into your mind? Because obviously if you're playing with the concept of, this is a fictionalized version of history, but there's some prior knowledge there that needs to exist. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think needs to exist for the reader to get fully immersed in this story, that this is about this situation or this person throughout history. Did you just enjoy the process of writing it and worry about the reader later, or was that a constant sort of thing in your mind?
I wasn't worried so much about the reader because it was my first novel and I didn't have any readers. I think now I think about readers much more. What I thought at the time was, this is slightly fantastical, but is it credible? We know it's fiction, all right? At the end of the day, nobody's saying that Hitler had a baby, but is it credible that it could have happened out of sight, up at the Berghof in the Austrian Alps? Is it credible? So what I had to do was marry up take what was fact. I actually wanted a crucial thing to happen on D-Day, but Hitler actually doesn't appear in the book very often. There's one scene where he's in it, and I didn't want him to be around. But in actual fact, he was at the Berghof, I found out, on D-Day. So therefore, I had to change the whole scenario and all my dates around and things like that. So there are sometimes where and I've done several books since where there have been real characters, and you have to marry up those real factual dates because they don't change.
Yeah.
You know, the day JFK died, the day the war ended, those things never change. And so you as a writer have to work around them, and your fictional characters have to weave around them too.
I'm interested then to know, obviously you've written a lot of stuff that is all linked in with the military history or history of I'm right in saying military history. Where's the knowledge come from for you to write that then? And what was the learning journey like for you? Did you approach each case as you were writing it as a research project?
Yeah, I do. I sort of see my novels, I pick either an event or a place as my pivot, as a sort of a bit like a hat stand. And then what I do is I hang things off of that original. So I'm trying to think of another. So the fourth book is about the Berlin Wall going up. And so I read huge amounts, every book I could get my hands on the going up of the wall, films, Pate newsreels, everything, newspapers, everything like that. I read everything I could, and I get everything prepared in about 2 months. And then I start to write, and then I research along the way as I'm going on. And I generally do a visit as well too. So I had to go to Berlin.
Nice.
For that one. And I took a bike tour around the wall, one of those wall bike tours. Recommend those, they're very good.
I love that idea. Researching for book's sakes. So many people could do that in so many amazing places.
Oh yeah, it's one of the perks, I have to say.
Yeah,
one of the real perks. But mine tend to be Europe. I'm not the sort of person that's going to go off to the Maldives for 2 weeks or anything like that. They tend to be very short.
Sicily?
Sicily I haven't done. I've done Venice. I've done Venice, Hamburg, Berlin twice.
You could do Italy.
But yeah, where have I thought about doing? Budapest. I want to do one in Budapest. I love Budapest, so that's a great excuse to go back. I quite fancy doing Madrid as well, so I'll generally pick a place, talk to my editor about it.
Yeah. Interesting. Be cheeky question to jump in here. In regards to the research trips, a lot of people would love to do that. Financially, they might not be able to. And you mentioned, hinting that to your team. Is there any kind of financial support from the people you work with for that sort of thing?
No. I mean, it's tax deductible. It's tax deductible, but that's about it, really. I think what you do is so the first book I wrote without going anywhere, never been to Berlin. The book about Bergen in Norway, I couldn't go. I had it all booked, and then COVID happened, so I had to do that. I mean, Google Maps, Google street maps are fantastic. You do what you can, and if it's not financially viable, then I would read everything you can get hold of. Old maps. I'm constantly buying old maps off eBay. British Library, I go down there quite a lot. Newspapers, absolutely fantastic. I've got a subscription to the newspaper archive. I always trawl through all the newspapers because that's where you find real life. That's where you find the real stories about real people, and also adverts, things like what were they eating, what were they drinking, what did they use to wash their clothes. You can always pepper those in everywhere, and it feels like you're in that moment.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Chris, so I found the video. If you want to introduce the next part of the show, so what's the story?
So after this little video that Chris can play, or shall I play it because I can actually see it now?
Oh, yeah, you can play
it. Yeah. Weirdly, it did switch over halfway through that last section. No idea why.
Yeah, it was me. I was fiddling around, found it.
Oh, okay.
I know the reason, but I won't embarrass you online.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to play part 2 of the show after this little video, and that's watch the story. So when we come back, hopefully you can talk to us all about A Dangerous Game and give us a little blurb or a pitch for this if you can when we come back, and then we can talk about it. So after this, watch the story. So, Mandy, A Dangerous Game. Tell us all about it, please.
Okay, so it's 1952. It's London. It's December, and I don't know if anybody remembers. Well, probably not old enough to remember, but there was a huge fog in 1952 in London. It was a killer fog, and it lasted 4 days. It was completely encapsulated London over a 20-mile radius, and everything basically stopped, and lots of people died. They think that now 12,000 people possibly died as a result of that 4 days of very heavy smog due to all sorts of, but mostly respiratory problems. So it's reintroducing Harry Schroeder from the previous book called The Hidden Storyteller. He's a German detective. He's been widowed in the war, and he's a sort of lugubrious, quite cynical character, that type of copper, very much influenced by my love for Bernie Gunther from the Philip Kerr books. And he is seconded over to London and ostensibly to do some German liaison thing, but actually it is to a special project. He needs to identify and find a Nazi who is threatening basically the economy and the political future of the country. And Amazing. He teams up with a WPC called Dexy.
Yeah. Nice. I'm really intrigued at how you found out about the smog situation.
Well, I was born and brought up in London. I remember the fog. So I was born in the early 70s, and we were still having big fogs then. Less so because there were more people with central heating and less fires. But I think it was something we all knew about. And I think then there was a Channel 5 documentary, which was really good. And that took you day by day through the fog.
Do you know, it's really interesting because I've been mocking these people on social media, not on social media, to my friends about social media, because a few weeks ago we've had a lot of fog in the UK or in Wales recently, and people were actually saying this is like conspiracy fog, and I was laughing at this. So people out there actually think the fog that we're having, because it lasted, maybe 3 days was because it was manufactured somehow.
I'm no meteorologist, but I think the fogs we have now are caused by different things. The fogs in the 50s were caused by cheap coal, basically. All the good coal was exported because the country was in such debt. So the bad coal was this stuff called nutty slack, and it was just very smelly and very smoky. And what happened was there was some sort of climatic thing where basically there was a lid across London. All the coal came up, all the coal smoke came up, hit the lid, and it just formed this smog. That's how I understand it. That's a very simplified version of it.
Wow.
And there was no wind, so it didn't move for 4 days. And if you look at old pictures of things like Battersea Power Station, it was chugging out from its 4 or 5 chimneys, and that was one of many across London. So
Incredible.
basically, it was just disgusting smog, and it was green, smelly, horrible stuff.
Do you think that's where like the old saying "foggy London town" came from?
It came back from much earlier than that, than Victorian times, in the old pea supers. Yeah, but yeah, I remember the pea supers having to meet my mum from the bus stop, because she couldn't get home from work without us coming to meet her at the bus stop.
Wow, incredible.
So thick.
Yeah, what are the reviews for this? Do you read reviews as a writer?
The good ones, maybe.
Yeah. You may have heard this one then, and it says, having read all of Mandy's books, A Dangerous Game was another excellent read. Her historical fiction is brilliant, very atmospheric, and writing cinematic. And I really like that comment because it highlights a few things. First of all, your historical fiction is brilliant. We already know why that is. You talked about your extensive research. Very atmospheric and cinematic. So just by the cover of this novel and the way you talked about the smog and all the secrets that are happening within it, you can see it's cinematic. But you as a writer, how do you write to make your readers think, wow, this is very atmospheric and this is very cinematic? How do you do that as a writer?
What I try and do is just put myself in go behind the eyes of my characters and think. So I'd write a few scenes and I'd think, oh no, I can't write that because they can't see it. They can't see it. So I would just put myself behind the eyes of the character and say, what can they see? And if they can't see it, then they have to imagine it. And therefore it becomes quite scary, so like something could come out of the smog to threaten. If you can't see it, then you can't explain it or you can't describe it. So it was only about a third of the way through I thought, oh hell, what have I done here? Already a third of the way through. I thought, oh hell, how am I going to carry on with this? And then you've got to keep the tension going when most of London has stopped, basically. So it was definitely challenging. And because it was only the second novel that I'd done where I wasn't writing about war. And any wartime writer knows that it seems an almost crass thing to say, but war is a gift for writers. And one of my writer friends said that once, because it gives you a stage. You've only got to say World War II, London, Blitz, and people have already got that image in their mind. You don't actually have to do a lot to embellish it. So wartime as a whole thing gives you a stage. When you leave wartime, there are no bombs going off. There's not things that are generally happening to create peril or crime or that sort of thing. So you, as a writer, you've got to create it yourself. And that's a challenge. That's definitely a challenge.
I can imagine. It's writing suspense and, atmospheric within a smog, must be really like a really good asset because you're leaning into the what's around the corner, what's behind you sort of feeling. But then to be able to continue that without being almost repetitive through the novel must be very difficult. And you said it was difficult. So you've obviously done a great job with that and for readers to resonate with the atmosphere in that story.
Oh, thanks.
But
But there are only so many words for fog.
Yeah, of course.
I had an entire list of my thesaurus. I went through every thesaurus I could find.
Was there any word that was surprising to you for fog?
No, I don't think so. I think I thought of them, pretty much thought, oh no, come on, please give me some more. Please give me some more. I can't say fog again.
Yeah. And Anya says, I'm going to check out these books. I love historical fiction. So you've got
Oh, good.
a reader for you there. Go on, Chris.
Yeah. My question, Mandy, was going to be, obviously writing historical fiction. And I mean this in the best sort of respectful way. But the way I'm going to phrase the question is, anyone could write about some of the topics that you write about because they're freely available to everyone to find. So what makes your books unique to you? Do you know what you're writing about when you're writing about these historical events, and what part of you is being inserted into the book?
I think with mine, there's always going to be a feisty woman. There's never a point where I'm going to write about a woman who just, quite happily in the 1950s sits in the kitchen and is a housewife. Underneath it all, she'll be a spy, or she'll be SOE or someone like that. So I think that's possibly what people who follow my books will know, that they're going to get. There's going to be a woman who's got some surprising side to her, even if she starts out looking quite conventional. The difficulty with the gender thing and the female thing in these books is that we have to understand that women in the 40s and 50s weren't in a position that they are in now, in jobs. So what I have to do is I have to find those women that would have the opportunity to break out of their mold, as it were, come out of their shell, break out of their mold. So people like SOE, people like journalists, police officers, that sort of thing, so that they have a reason. So 2 of my books have featured a journalist. She's got a reason to be somewhere. Again, it's going down that credible route. So in A Dangerous Game, the female WPC, there's plenty of misogyny surrounding her. Cup of tea, love, can you get us a cup of tea? Slap on the bottom, that sort of thing. It happened. You can't ignore it. But her personality rises above that.
Yeah. Yeah, nice. Cool. I was going to say then, Dangerous Game is out now and people can pick that up. But what is Mandy now writing? What's coming out next?
So I've got, I'm lucky enough to have 2 publishers. I've got another book coming out in May called Mrs. Spy. I am obsessed by spy fiction. It's practically all I read at the moment is spy fiction, and I've always wanted to write. There's plenty of espionage in A Dangerous Game, plenty of espionage, but I've already wanted to write a book about the Cold War. I love the 60s. I love the Cold War, the Cambridge spies, Philby, etc., all of that. And so it's about a female spy, funnily enough.
Nice.
Who's middle-aged. I felt like middle-aged women needed to have their stage as well. She's a middle-aged widow. She's a mother, and she's a spy as well. So I'm quite excited about that. And I'm writing another one that is going to take a journey across Europe, basically, from London, wending its way across Europe. Though I can't say too much about that because it will give the story away.
Yeah, nice.
Interesting. Mandy, one of my questions is, obviously you're looking at historical events a lot, and you're looking at powerful women and women who have the opportunity to break the mold. What scares you the most about women for the future, and some of the challenges that you think they may face compared to some of the challenges that they have faced throughout history? I
fear that we might not keep. I think we've moved forward a lot, but I don't think we've moved forward enough. And I do worry that sometimes the internet is. I'm not anti-IT. I'm just not very good at it. I'm not very good at social media, and I will never write anything that involves technology because I don't understand it. But I do worry sometimes that the internet has started to look at the sort of aesthetics of women. And applaud the aesthetics of women far too much, where we made great strides in, jobs. Like, we've had 2 heads of MI5 that have been females. ironically not ahead of MI6. So yeah, that's what I worry about, really, is that it might stop that and make it a bit static, really.
Yeah, good question, good answer, I think, Chris. It's certainly something that is a well-timed question, because we can see those things that are happening. And I think it is damaging. And there's a lot of countries looking at banning certain social media platforms for certain reasons, and that's probably down to those sorts of concerns as well. So you mentioned that you're writing the spy novel, and I've forgotten the name of it already because I'm terrible with my memory.
Mrs. Spy is coming out in May.
Spy. In May,
Yeah.
so we can expect that in May.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, what we're going to do is going to move on to part 3 of the show, which is community question time. If you have questions for our guest, please send them into the chat now, and me and Chris Hooley will get on to our staple questions and we can ask her those. So we do have a video for that as well. Part 3 of the show, community questions, coming right up. So, Mandy, if you could take any character from the world of fiction, whether that be a TV show, a film, or a novel, and put that character into one of your novels, what character would you choose and why?
Oh, Jackson Lamb. I think he's the most phenomenal character, and oh my gosh, he's, you know, it's genius. It's just genius. I'm on number 6 of the 7 books, I think, of Slough House books. And he's just such an unctuous, odious, glorious character. I think I'd take him back to Berlin, get him very, very drunk, and make him tell me all his secrets about the Cold War.
Oh, yeah. Well, have you seen the series of that as well?
Oh, it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
So I've not read the books, but Jackson Lamb in the series I thought was absolutely fabulous. So how does that compare to the novels, do you think?
I started reading the novels first. I think that makes a difference. I was already hooked on the novels. I think the one person that really comes out in the books that doesn't come out so well on TV, nothing to do with the actor, it's just because he has quite a lot of inner voice in the books, inner monologue, is Roddy Ho. He's an absolutely odious character, and he's just so good at creating these irritating people that you don't want to have around, and yet, you know, they're all thrown together. It's the most brilliant concept, and you know, I just love them. I almost don't want to finish the series because they're too good.
That's a great answer.
It is. There's a question in the community. I think we should slice that in between our staple questions. Indeed.
So from Anya, thank you. What historical period or place would you avoid writing about, and why?
Oh, I would love to write about Vietnam and the Vietnam War conflict. It was never a war, apparently. And I have written one chapter in one book about it, but I think it's one of those where it's so complicated that it's very difficult to write about and get the right balance, because there's no right and wrong. We all know that, you know, atrocities went on, but it's such a fine line to get the right balance of humanity, I think. So although I love writing about the 60s, I love it. In the chapter in the book that I wrote, it pretty much skimmed the Vietnam War, but I would like to. But it would mean I'd have to go to Vietnam, and I don't do hot places. I don't like the heat. I don't do hot places.
I'm sure Cambodia would be beautiful, though.
Oh, I think it would. And Laos, yeah.
Yeah, good question, good answer. Thank you for that.
Yeah, so the second staple question that we have is, if you could take the ending to any fiction, be it TV, film, or books, what would you change the ending to, and why?
Atonement. I can't read. I love that book. I love the film. Can't watch it. Can't read it anymore because of the ending. And I think it was the first time I realized that the author has a real ability to play with the emotions of the reader and they could so easily not. They could so easily make it happy, and without giving too much away if you haven't read it. But I just thought, you've really played around with us here, and my heart was cranking. So I think I'd like to be able to read that book again and watch the film, but I can't.
Would it be as impactful though without the ending? If
Probably
we change
not.
it,
Probably not.
yeah. See, I agree with what you're saying in terms of obviously it would be nice, but I don't know. Sometimes when it hits hard and it hits emotionally, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh.
And I've killed off darlings before now, and people say, even my editor says, "Did you have to kill them off?" And I said, "Yep, yep."
Well, of course.
And that's what Mick Herron is so good at as well. He kills off some major characters, because he then brings in another fantastic character.
Well, the biggest shock for me was Game of Thrones, to lose a big character at the start of the story. There are many things that people do with their darlings, kill them off, but generally throughout the story. But that was so early on, that took me by surprise. Yeah, good answer. I've got. Go on, Chris.
I was going to say I've got a random question. Obviously, being a midwife for 20 years, it'd be strange if we didn't ask you this question. Who would you have liked to have delivered the birth of? Obviously, you said about not obviously wanting to put in that much effort in for obviously giving the birth to or delivering Hitler's baby, but who would you have liked to have been there at the delivery of their birth?
Oh, if I could go back in time, any of the Beatles. Any of the Beatles.
That's a good shout.
Yeah. Mary Quant, maybe. Mary Quant.
Cool. I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball out there in terms of, it's probably not a curveball, it's an old school kind of question. But if you were going to take one book to a desert island to read over and over and over, what one book would you take?
Oh God, now you're asking. I might say Harriet the Spy, except it's quite short. Probably Pride and Prejudice, because I have read that quite a lot. Yeah, it's my go-to, comfort read. It's definitely my go-to comfort read. The characters are so brilliant, so good.
They do say a character makes the story. There's a lot of talk about that, which I agree. One more question.
Another question.
Go on.
Ask the audience one, Chris, and then I'll ask my other one.
Another one from Anya, thank you. What is a conspiracy theory you think might be true?
Kennedy's death. I think Kennedy's. Yeah, I think there's a lot more behind that than, I think the conspiracy theorists are right that something went on there. Definitely.
It is certainly one of those things that, we were showed that in school, and surprising to see that in school, thinking about it now, it's quite graphic, but also there are so many things at play, even just on the surface that we were getting shown. There's so much that wasn't shown. And there's so many conversations and whispers that something must be up in that situation.
And there was a conspiracy, we know, but I'm fairly fascinated by the Watergate affair as well. Yeah. I would, read and watch anything on the water. I do love all the President's Men as a film.
We're going to fit it in. One more question, Chris, before yours, Chris. Sorry. Anna says, as a midwife, do you watch Call the Midwife, and what do you think of it?
I did used to. I don't anymore. I watched the original series and thought they were great. The book originally was always in the coffee room, funnily enough, and I used to give it to, if I had students with me, I'd give Call the Midwife, the original book, to students, because it has got some brilliant births in there. And, with nothing, with just not even a pair of gloves, sort of type births. I think as the series gone on, it's obviously got very televised, but they are really good at doing properly staged births. Unlike Casualty and all sorts of grim programs that are really terrible at birth, including one called Bodies, which was about an obstetric unit. It was absolutely terrible. They got things wrong all over the shop. I think I wrote an article about it years and years ago.
Do you hate it when you, knowing a lot about pregnancy, when you see a TV show or a film and the pregnant woman definitely has clearly a pillow under their t-shirt?
Yes, yes, I do. Yeah. I saw one yesterday. It was funny enough. I said to my partner, terrible bump.
It's crazy, isn't it? In the modern day, you think they would have good aesthetics to make it look real, but they don't.
No,
you know, my biggest bugbear, sorry to talk about it, when you watch a TV show or a film and they're going to bed or they're in bed and it's completely light everywhere, I cannot stand that. They made no attempt.
Coffee cups. Have you ever noticed that no coffee cups have any liquid in them, let alone coffee? They're always empty because they sort of do this with them, and when you can tell that there's no liquid in there whatsoever. Yeah. And I'm always screaming at the TV for that. Screaming.
So, yeah. Enough of my TV rant. Sorry, Chris. Go on with that question. I know you're waiting, and we've just gone over the hour, so put it in there.
Yeah, no, I was going to ask it as a sort of a new staple, but I suppose, obviously, having been a midwife for 20 years, I'm guessing you would have taught people and helped them on their journey. But I'm going to bring it to writing in terms of who have you learned the most from as a writer, whether that be speaking to them on a regular basis or reading their work and learning how maybe sentences are constructed or, you know, a novel is structured. And the second part to that question is, who would you recommend to other people that you're aware of them as an author, but we may not be aware of them?
Ooh,
two strands.
First part of that, I think probably Philip Kerr, because I've read a lot of the Bernie Gunthers, and I think he manages to keep everything really fresh, even though he's dealing with the same character in various different scenarios. I think his writing is so easy to read. You barely know you're turning the pages. Oh, who do I? I'm not sure. There's one person. Do you know, I can't think of somebody that's kind of under the radar, except for my friend Emma Flint, who has written a book called Other Women, which is absolutely phenomenal. And she bases hers on all true crime stories, and she weaves a fictional story around it. So nice. I would recommend that.
Fantastic. Amazing. Right. So before we wrap this up then, Mandy, where can people find out more information about you? Where can they follow you on socials? And where can they buy A Dangerous Game?
So A Dangerous Game is in a couple of supermarkets in the UK. So it's in Tesco's and Asda. It is in all good bookshops, independents. It's online and it's in ebook, and there will be an audiobook coming out, I'm assured. Yeah, so all good bookshops, and you can find it online.
Nice. And what about socials? Do you have your accounts?
Socials, Instagram. I think I'm Mandy Robotham. It's easy. My name is not very common, so it's easy to find me on Instagram and at Twitter. And I think I'll be going on Blue Sky soon as well.
Probably wise with Twitter. Anyway, yeah, give Mandy a follow and please pick up A Dangerous Game. We will leave a link to that book from somewhere. We'll have a look around and put it in the description when this comes out properly. So please, if you're watching this back, pick it up from the description and give Mandy a follow and support her moving forward. So look out for I forgot it. The Spy.
Mrs. Spy.
Mrs. Spy.
Damn it. I'll remember it one day. Okay, Mrs. Spy, look out for that as well. But Mandy, from us, thank you so much. You've been
Thanks for having me. It's been great. Yeah, thank you.
You've had a brilliant career in all sorts of things, and now a fabulous author of historical fiction in the war genre. So looking forward to getting stuck into those. So thank you so much for me.
Thanks a lot. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, guys. Have a great weekend, everybody. Find the clip.